Order this regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the webpage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. Public and other board members will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks will be made to the chair. Anyone who wishes to address the board is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. As a reminder, the minute taker is participating remotely this evening. Board members, please be sure to turn on your microphone when speaking. If the minute taker is unable to hear, they will ask that you speak louder or turn your microphone on. All right, our first order of business is our roll call.
Richard Clow.
Here.
Edward Guyot.
Here.
Tad Schrantz.
Here.
Adam Burke.
Here.
Zach Leroy.
Here.
All right, our first item is to review minutes from our October meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at them? Is there any discussion about the content? All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes? All right, the motion is made by Mr. Burke and seconded.
I'll second Ed Guyot.
Seconded by Mr. Guyot. All those in favor of approving the minutes? And it is approved unanimously. All right, do we have any unfinished business from the staff?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, then we will proceed to the first application of the night. ZBA 2025-08. Petitioner Michael Pappas of 47 to 151 Main Street LLC represented, at least at this, it was Timothy Sampson of Sampson Architects requesting an extension for property located at 147 Main Street, tax map number 584-060-000-000 and is in the downtown core district. The petitioner is asking an extension for a special exception granted on August 7th, 2023 per Article 26.6.9 of the zoning regulations. We could hear from staff first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property at 147-151 Main Street is an existing vacant parcel located on the northwest corner of Main Street and Davis Street with the Cumberland Farms Gas and Convenience across the street to the east. The property used to contain a two-story brick construction mixed-use building known as the Cobblestone Building. However, the lot is currently vacant after a fire forced the demolition of the Cobblestone Building. In 2023, a boundary line adjustment was approved by the Planning Board for the subject parcel, an adjacent lot to the west at 0 West Street, and the adjacent lot to the north at 143 Main Street as part of a larger plan to redevelop the site. The property also received a special exception from the Zoning Board of Adjustment to allow for a drive-through as was required from Section 842C2 of the Land Development Code for parcels located in the downtown core zoning district. The Land Development Code has since been amended to prohibit a drive-through in the downtown core. The purpose of this application is to request an extension of the approved special exception from 2023. The special exception permitted a drive-through use to accommodate a pickup only drive-through lane for pre-ordered food items. The drive-through was not proposed to have an order board or be designed to allow for orders to be placed. The meeting minutes from that meeting were included in the packet and outline the original request. The only condition that was put on that original approval was that no exterior order board be present. Staff report does include some basic terms, including the definition of a drive-through use, as well as the use standards that are currently in the code, the approval standards for a special exception. And then just some additional considerations for the extension request. The board will need to determine if the established findings of facts and conditions of the approved special exception are still applicable to the property and proposed project, and that extension request is warranted for good cause. Good cause is a substantial reason of justification of why the special exception has not yet been acted on by the applicant, and includes a reasonable plan on how the applicant intends to act on the special exception within the time frame granted by that extension. The board will need to determine a realistic and reasonable amount of time to grant the extension for. And then there's just a suggested conditions, which are exactly the same as what was previously conditioned on the approval, as well as a recommended approval motion if the board is inclined to approve this request this evening. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. So as we go through this application, when we get to the point of voting on things, we're basically going to have to go through the standards and vote on each. There are 7 of those. Did everyone see that this is different from a variance?
That's correct. The same special exception criteria
Correct.
apply to this application as if it were a brand-new application.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Does anyone else from the board have any questions for staff? All right, then we will open it up to the applicant.
Good
Sounds
evening.
like it's on, yes.
Thank you. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Chairman Clow, members of the board. For the record, my name is Eli Lano. I'm an attorney with Bernstein Schur in Manchester. Before I get too far into this, I'd like to, as the chairman knows, I guess, burnish my Main Street Keene credentials, and that my parents still live on over on the south end by Baker Street. So I have spent plenty of time in this building while it still existed. I had a couple New Year's Eve celebrations at the Cobblestone and all of these things, but it's good to be home in Keene. Happy to talk to you about this. And again, I appreciate the board's kind words last meeting, and again, thank you for your patience as Mr. Pappas, the principal of 147-151 Main Street LLC, has been working to get this extension filed and for us to be here in front of you to discuss this. So first, I think we have the piece about that Mr. Clements mentioned, that the ordinance has changed, but I think it's important to consider that because this is an extension, even though it's considered as a new application, it should still be considered under the previous criteria. Otherwise, there's really no reason to have extension language, which violates canons of construction when you consider a statute like the LDC. So we are in the core district, which if we had lapsed this without an extension request, we would need a variance, as was discussed. But as the chair mentioned, we are here under the same 7 criteria that were considered two years and a little bit ago. Again, from section 26.6.9 of the LDC, a special exception granted by the Zoning Board of Adjustment shall be valid if exercised within 2 years from the date of final approval, or as further extended by the Zoning Board of Adjustment for good cause. We're here, I guess, before we get into the criteria, just to discuss the good cause. Certainly, no one here is unfamiliar with the fact that it's been a difficult time to build, despite the fact that there's been a huge amount of desirability for various things, including housing and mixed use, as we're proposing here. However, rates had been stuck at not historically high rates, but recent historically high rates for at least the full 2-year period, as well as trying, when redeveloping a site where the building previously was from 1926 and had myriad uses ranging from a grocery store and a deli and various other commercial uses on that first floor, up through the final iteration prior to the fire, which was the Domino's, the Piazza, and the Cobblestone. So you're all familiar with the building, but the point is, it was easy enough on a nice downtown block next to sort of abutting the college and near all of the other amenities of downtown to put something in this building. The good cause and the challenge we've had is that trying to rebuild from start in a time when building input prices have been very high, we've seen these tariffs come in, all these other things, trying to start from scratch and build a building where we can get basically an anchor tenant, something in that commercial space. We're not going to have any issue renting units to residential uses. This is a great place for that. Again, it is right by the college, it's right downtown, it's a perfect spot for it. But to be able to build a building of the character that is required of this beautiful downtown. I don't know if you have in your packet the elevation drawings, but this is a 3-story brick building with character and, we're not trying to put up a steel industrial box that's just awful. We want something that people can be proud of, that Keene can be proud of, and that works for the location and that carries on the history of success in this location. But to do so, this needs to pencil out. The good cause is that we can't just build it and hope they'll come. We've talked to different commercial tenants and trying to figure out ways. There's been, along with Tim Sampson, who is the applicant, the of record representative here, who is the architect on this project, working with different end users to try to build something and draw something that makes sense so that we can get a reasonable rate of return on that property in the commercial piece, has been a challenge. So in designing this, that drive-through, which to distinguish is not a hello, may I take your order, Dunkin' Donuts drive-through that you're gonna hear chirping at all hours, and it's gonna be stacking up cars in a queue on Saturday mornings and workday mornings. This is sort of a more modern take on the drive-through concept, where you go on your phone, you use the app, and they say, all right, your pizza order or whatever the case is will be ready in 25 minutes. You plan that. You either walk up and take it out, or you drive through and take it out with an understanding that your goal is not to queue there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Your goal is to time this about as well as you can so that you drive through. And that's why in that back parking lot, there's a limited amount of spaces, but which would be, generally speaking, for employees. There's also parking on Davis Street, and there's parking in the front. But the point of this is that it would open onto Davis Street and really set you into a spot where you're not adding a significant amount of traffic to Main Street. But additionally, with Main Street, if you come in, and I did this tonight on my way into town, you take the right and it's divided there. You can't take a left back onto Main Street. You either can continue on Davis, or you take a right. So in terms of traffic considerations, et cetera, of places for a drive-through, this is really about as well contained as you could ask for, because it's not a big draw drive-through where you see it and you say, oh, I'll stop at the drive-through. I want McDonald's or whatever the case is, which we have out on West Street. It's in the right place for that. This is not that kind of drive-through. So I think it probably makes sense to get into the criteria, but again, to answer questions that the board may have about good cause, such that you may consider what we're discussing here tonight, I think it probably makes sense to have assent on that.
Does anyone have any questions that would address that element of it? I know a few of us are realtors and are aware of the difficulty of construction and loans and things like that. To me, that is, I think, enough, but that's just my take on it.
If I heard you correctly, if I heard you correctly, I thought I heard you say that you don't have an anchor tenant dedicated. So is this being asked for just the option for a potential anchor tenant?
Mike Pappas, for all of you. Little Caesars is the one that we've been working with the most. And that's why we've got the drive-through set up the way that they have been doing it for the last 10, 12 years. It's not an order type drive-through. Honestly, I wanted to add to what he was saying, but I'm not going to cut him off. There was one thing in there that was missed. If you pull up to that window and your order isn't ready or you haven't placed one, they tell you to keep going. Mm-hmm. So it's a consistent window. It's a pickup window. I mean, they have the ability to just process cars at a high rate because they don't have a menu board. There's not even a light out there. That's the way they've done it, and that's the way that we proposed it, and that's right now the only tenant. If there was a different tenant with a different type of drive-through, then I'd have to apply for something different. The only tenant that we're looking for right now is a tenant that can handle that kind of pickup window. It's a pickup window. It's not, it is a drive-through. I'm trying to say it's not, but it's a pickup window. It's not an order window. It's a straight pickup for your product. And if you try to order there, they tell you to go park somewhere and come in, or get on your phone, not in line.
And I do think we will go back over some of those points as we get into the criteria as well, because it does come into public health, safety, and welfare, as well as traffic considerations.
Right, we don't have any elevations and/or diagrams of the lot in our packet. Do you have anything you can distribute?
I wish I hadn't scratched on these, but I don't think they're offensive.
It wouldn't be anyway.
Are these the essentially the same elevations from 2 years ago?
3-story brick building with some character designs.
Glass facade, a little bit of glass facade on the first floor.
Yeah.
Theoretically, it looks just like the last one,
Okay, I recall.
newer product.
And you'll see my notes on those where I've drawn in some of the traffic circulation as well as the screening, et cetera, that's required by the ordinance.
Little Caesars is looking for somewhere in the 2,000 square foot range for their unit, which leaves, another couple thousand in change for one other unit.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough room with what they need to have their facility set up the way they do with refrigeration and drive-through and all that. It really only leaves one other first floor commercial tenant. Don't have that one yet.
But again, that brings us back to that point where if we have an anchor, something where people are there and the space is there, you can have something that's maybe more local, less of a national tenant, give some opportunities for the building.
And would you be hoping, I mean, at least pursuing, if you were going to pursue something, that would, as opposed to it was three retail or before, hopefully just two on the
Yes.
first floor this time?
Yep, that's the plan.
Just in how the sizing works out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Ted Schrantz. So a couple of questions. So, we're not the planning board, so we don't review, elevations or site plan layout. But in this case, site plan is interesting in that it's the request for the drive-through. And so we didn't get a site plan in our packet of information. I don't know if that was part of the previous application, but it'll be interesting to hear more about traffic patterns and whether there was a traffic study done or not. Again, I don't believe that's under our purview, but, I think that's probably one of the big concerns really is how much traffic are we adding to Main Street and to side streets like Davis by continuing to allow the use.
And we do have some suggested numbers from the potential tenant about what sort of numbers they expect at a location like this. I also think, yes, I love standing in front of a zoning board and saying, frankly, that's a planning board matter. But in this case, you have, for example, 3 is that the proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as to be harmonious with the surrounding area. I think that gives you the foothold into asking us about what the elevation looks like and that this is going to be harmonious with St. Bernard's on one side and then the rest of the buildings on Main Street here as well. So I think this is a broader discussion than we would be having if we were under 674-33. Loath as I am to admit it.
And also, it's only takeout. There's no seating for eating. I mean, it's possible somebody would like lean against a wall if there was a couple of moments where they would have to wait, but that's all we're looking at. It is not a restaurant sit-down style
Nope,
or anything.
there's no seating.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions on this part? All right, you may continue.
Mr. Schrantz, do you mind if I grab those back just for my notes on those things? I'll come to you. Thank you. All right, so again, in terms of the application, under 8.4.2 C2 of the LDC, we're requesting the special exception for a drive-through based on, again, the previous iteration of the code. I think it's worth pointing out that a drive-through is permitted by special exception in the growth district and the transition district, which we are the next property across the street to the south, which is if the church wants to do communion by drive-through, they could ask for a special exception. And then behind, further up the street, there is also that opportunity. So we're not far out of the area that the code considers appropriate for this by right, or by special exception. So in terms of the criteria, one, the nature of the proposed application is consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning regulation, this LDC, and the city's comprehensive master plan, and complies with all applicable standards in this LDC for the particular use. Again, with the obvious caveat that we're going from the previous version of this, certainly believe it does still apply in that case. This is still in that downtown core district, next to those other two districts right on the edge. Opportunity to build something where high-intensity mixed uses, including commercial, residential, civic, and cultural uses, are expected and proposed. We're doing that in keeping with this, where it's a small amount of residential units upstairs. There's obviously a need for that in New Hampshire broadly. There's a need for that in Keene. And then having the opportunity to basically fund the construction of this building by having the commercial tenants, as we've discussed here, is the opportunity to make sure that this thing doesn't sit for a long time, which is the risk of any development property. And then it is worth considering, even on that lot, that the former gas station on the other corner of the property across from Athens is frankly a bit of a blight on the downtown landscape because it hasn't been developed. So this is an opportunity where the board can give him the extension and give us an opportunity to continue here with something that the master plan and the LDC is looking for. 2, the proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as not to endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. I do think this is the piece that comes into the fact that, yes, this will be site plan reviewed, but I want to tell you why it is a valid site plan that will not affect the public health, safety, or welfare in much the same way as if we were talking about a variance. So by separating the use so that we put the building, the mass of the building up on the Davis and Main Street corner, we create this parking circulation behind it. Obviously, Main Street is a far more traveled road than Davis Street. And again, as I discussed, you can only make a right onto Davis from Main Street, and you can only make a right back onto it. So in thinking back to the way the pizza place at this location used to work, if you think about the Domino's, you would pull in, you would go, you'd pick up your pizza, maybe you bought on the app, maybe you called, they also did some delivery, but you had to navigate the site to get there, and you were on the Main Street side of it. In terms of promoting health, safety, and welfare, we have separated that so that the uses are toward the back. You drive your car in, you drive your car out. You may never end up getting to Main Street if you're, for example, going back to the Keene State College. So it is a better way to do this. And that is the advantage where we had the ability on a 1926 building. They had the ability to rent what was there because you didn't have to pay the building costs. Now we have, unfortunately, the burden of building this thing, but the opportunity to redesign it as to something that works for this century, not for basically 100 years ago. One point on this is that he's already raised is that there is queuing room of 145 feet, so you're not creating a tail out onto Davis Street or any of the things when site plan review is done on any of the drive-throughs I've worked on. It's a question of how many cars can you safely have, and what is the question if you have overflow. And here, the point is that they won't have overflow because if it's not your turn, go somewhere else, go park, come back when it's your turn, so that as people figure out the efficiency of this method, it really should just go quick, safely through, circulate the site onto Davis, right-hand turn onto Main. You're not crossing traffic. You can't cross traffic. It's divided. Health, safety, and welfare is very much promoted. The proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as to be harmonious with the surrounding area and will not impede the development, use, and enjoyment of the adjacent property. We have a couple things going for us on that point. One is that the same principals own the building directly next door, so we do have a buffer zone in terms of our most affected abutter. And then also the fact that, as shown on that proposed elevation, we want this to be harmonious with the neighborhood, and that is part of the reason we need this extension, is because we're not trying to build something cheap that doesn't fit. We're trying to build something that does fit in, that he can say, I built that, I'm proud of that, that looks good on Main Street, it's gonna look good on Main Street for 100 years. Building an A building costs money, it's challenging. The point is, we need a little more time to build something harmonious, but I think we will do so if the board deigns to grant this relief. The proposed use will be of a character that does not produce noise, odors, glare, and/or vibration that adversely affects the surrounding area. I think the things that we've already touched on to that point is that no customer seating here. It's going to be something where people come, people go. It makes the site perform well. And then, of course, I think we can think back to what this has been previously, and there certainly was noise or vibration when it was the cobblestone. So this is an opportunity for us to have a new, everything built to code, everything built to spec, going to be a nice building for a much more demure use. 5, the proposed use will not place an excessive burden on public improvements, facilities, services, or utilities. Previously, when this was considered, this board found, and again, different iteration of this board found that that was not going to be the case, that there was not going to be anything excessive use on these. I would again expect that to be the same. This is not a high water or sewer use, and I also would expect this to have less of a municipal presence than the bar room did previously, which obviously resulted in a 5-alarm fire. So again, had nothing necessarily to do with the use, but we hope we can avoid that level of municipal engagement. 6, the proposed use will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant natural, scenic, or historic importance. Unfortunately, that ship has sailed a little bit in the fact that we have a blank slate here to build from a pad. So there's really, it's as close to NA as we're gonna get on that. And the proposed use will not create a traffic safety hazard or substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion. So I'm gonna read this piece because I think it's relevant. The proposed restaurant will have up to 20 employees with a maximum of 4 employees per shift, and we do have parking in the back separated for those employees. Customer sales are expected to average approximately 200 sales per day, with approximately 60 sales during the peak hour from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. The intersection at Main Street is right in, right out only, as discussed, and 60 vehicle trips during peak hour will not diminish the safety or capacity of Davis Street at Main Street. I think those numbers, especially in a downtown corridor of the city, are fairly reasonable. And again, we have the beauty of it's already designed so that no one is going to come from Davis Street and say, I'm going to go, stop at Cumberland Farms by going across 4 lanes. You'd have to go around the traffic circle, get back down. This has all been nicely designed through care of the city and redeveloping our downtown corridor so that this will all just work. We're not adding enough traffic in here that it's going to snare up that issue. And also it's late enough that we're not running into, for what there is, it's not like there's a rush hour that we're adding traffic directly into. So again, those are the criteria. I understand the board's concerns about how long this has taken so far. Do say that Mr. Pappas is focused on getting this done. This is going to be something that will be good for the city, good for downtown, a nice opportunity to replace what is basically a missing tooth in the downtown right now and have something back up. But it does take hard work and it does take a little bit of time, and we ask the board for your consideration to that end so that we hopefully can get this approval and get this thing built. Thank you.
So I already have a question or two. What is the anticipated, again, broadly speaking, number of residential units?
Per floor plate, 8, so 16 total.
And
Second
so
floor.
how many parking spaces are we talking about for that?
So the property's in the downtown core, so there's no required parking for any use.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Guyot.
This is probably a question for Evan. There's some mention about the adjacent zoning areas to this property. So my curiosity is, what is the closest boundary to a zoning area that would allow, by exception, a drive-through? Given that this drive-through is on the Davis Street side behind Main Street, I'm just curious as to those adjacencies.
I can speak to that if you don't mind. So I have this, and I will bring this up to you in a moment, but the downtown transition district here is, so it's our lot, and then lot 21, and then lot 29 is in that district, which allows by special exception. And then the church complex across the street, the next abutter by law to the south
Okay.
would allow it by
So
special
we're,
exception.
we're within a
There's,
couple
there's
lots.
also, in the staff report, there is a zoning map.
Yeah, great. Yeah, all right, I understand. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry to make you go back. Not at all. Get my steps in. That's good for me. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions?
I've got a question about timing. So if we approve the extension, how long does that extension allow for? And then, I guess, a question to the applicant also is there a, is this gonna be an ongoing process, or we understand that the Little Caesars isn't, imminent, it doesn't sound like. So maybe help us understand, if we're gonna be approving tonight, what that, from a timing standpoint, what that means.
My understanding is that it would be the same as if it was a new request, which gives it a 2-year extension. The LDC also implies that you could give a shorter extension if you thought that was appropriate. I would encourage you to stick to the 2-year extension. We're just speaking generally with development in the city. Stuff is taking a lot longer than we would like, and we generally would like to give applicants enough time to succeed and get stuff built.
And again, we as the applicant would certainly appreciate a 2-year extension. We also understand that we're at the mercy of the board here, and that coming back again would be a bad idea.
Any other questions?
Again, maybe it's not our purview, but just related to the traffic study or the counts that you had, those 60 cars, was that based on a study that was done, or is that just information that's provided by the potential tenant, or how did you come up with those numbers?
Provided by the potential tenant. I mean, he owns, the gentleman that is interested in this corner owns about 100 of them. So,
And again, I think ITE would probably bear that out, and I have no doubt that the planning board is gonna ask for those numbers. So, again, not me saying it's not your board's words, but that we will do that.
All right, good, thank you. Any other? All right, well, thank you very much. We will let you guys take a little break as we check to see if there is anyone here who would like to speak in opposition. Any public comments? Do we have anyone here with public comments in favor? All right, I don't see any. I don't believe the applicant has to respond to public comment. I will close the public hearing, but obviously, if we have questions that arise, we'll reopen it for questions. All right, excellent. So, would we like to go through point by point and discuss them and see how we can arrive at a decision? So our first one is the nature of the proposed application is consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning regulations, etc. Thoughts on that?
I'm okay with number one, particularly, given my questions, I should have looked back at the map that I do have now. The proximity to areas that would allow this by exception, plus the fact that the code has changed between the original application and today, I'm comfortable with number one.
Any other thoughts? Okay, number 2, proposed uses will be established, maintained, operated so as not to endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. I felt that that was addressed. Again, if we do happen to compare it to what was there previously, where we had a fire, I don't see that sort of thing happening with a new building, new construction, new code, and a use that actually would have far fewer people, at least in that section. Proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as to be harmonious with the surrounding area and will not impede the development, use, and enjoyment of adjacent property. Thoughts on that?
I think the use of this proposed development is consistent with what's going on in the abutting properties, so no issues with number 3 for me.
All right. Number 4, proposed use will be of a character that does not produce noise, odors, glare, and/or vibration that adversely affects the surrounding area. Again, what was there before certainly made more of almost all of those things than this potential use would. So I don't have a problem with that. It looks like everyone's fine with that. Number 5, the proposed use will not place an excessive burden on public improvements, facilities, services, or utilities. Again, it already has all of the infrastructure in place. It just has to be hooked up. Probably, again, using less than what was used before, at least for the anchor part of it. So everyone's okay with that? Okay, number 6, proposed use will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant natural, scenic, or historic importance. And as was stated, the fire took care of that. If there had been some sort of historic, it was the building that was there before, which had to be taken down. So again, blank slate. 7, the proposed use will not create a traffic safety hazard or a substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity of the use. I know that this was the biggest question 2 years ago. And part of it was, I will say, because the Aroma Joe's that's on West Street, they had to come back to us because they did have issues with traffic backing up onto West Street. And, but again, that is a different type of drive-through. So I think that particular scenario was weighing heavily on the ZBA because we had approved that particular variance at that time. And the board was a little bit gun-shy when this came before us a couple of years ago. I'll just say as an aside that part of my normal daytime thing is we just finished, I do traffic counts for NHDOT. And usually Main Street has about 10,000 cars a day each direction, so around 20,000 cars a day. And those numbers, if you just take the raw numbers, that's would happen in 10 minutes or less. So that's not a significant amount of number of cars. Yes, the possible of it backing up into Main Street was something that was discussed 2 years ago, but the fact, again, knowing how it would loop around onto Davis Street with, as was stated, 145 feet, that would take care of probably the only potential issue would be people, if there was a car or two queued up on Davis Street heading westbound, they might sort of be in the way of the exit. That would be the only potential thing I would see, and at that point, people would not be traveling very fast. And based on everything they're saying, that shouldn't happen anyway. So I can tell you that was the rationale a couple of years ago of why this is our biggest question mark. So I invite other statements.
Yeah, I'll make a comment on it, just because I think that it is probably interesting that it was the biggest issue a couple of years ago, right? And so you look at the numbers, you've got 60 sales in an hour. So that tells you that you're gonna do what, 1 per minute? Yeah, and you've got 140 feet, so that's 7 cars, so you can stack 7 cars. We don't get into traffic here too specifically, but, you know, is it possible that it backs up? Potentially, but, you know, I don't think it's our purview to dive deeply into the traffic count numbers, quite honestly. I think we're looking to try to confirm that there's not a safety issue here in a larger picture, and then when you go to planning board, then you're gonna have to deal with traffic very specifically at that, you know, at that purview. So, I think it's interesting that we talk about it here, but I don't think that, from my perspective, that it creates a traffic safety hazard.
I see everyone's concurring. Okay.
Well, I see that we're talking a lot about the Main Street part of it, but nobody's talking about the Davis Street side of it, and how much additional traffic is going to go to those back roads. I think it's concerning that there's nobody here that can speak up for that neighborhood. If you look at the abutters mailing list, there's nobody, they're not mailed to anybody in that neighborhood because those are all rental properties. So we have a tremendous amount of people that are going to be affected by this who weren't even notified or know about unless they're paying attention. That's, to me, is concerning in itself. You know, you're talking about even half those cars going back out through Davis Street and back and forth. You know, the school isn't fully affected because it's going to be off those hours, but you still have all those college kids walking through and people who live in that neighborhood. You know, I just want to bring that up because the point keeps on being made about Main Street. Main Street is almost irrelevant because of, you know, it's a drop in the bucket for how many other cars go by. But if anybody spends any time on that behind Davis Street, there's rarely any cars going through there, and you're talking about a tremendous uptick going through there. That's all. And there's, again, nobody who there to speak to it for their own neighborhood, unfortunately.
I do agree that that's good to look at. The fact is also that the closest intersection up and to the west is, there's a commercial, and then there's maybe 1 or 2 residential. So it's a little bit of a distance. So we're certainly not going to get any traffic backup on Davis Street from that direction. And it's hard to say what the traffic volume change would do. You know, that it's a 4-way intersection, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to the planning board will take a good hard look at traffic, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if they request a traffic study to understand that turning counts and all of the sort of traffic that goes to the area. And it's another opportunity for the neighbors to come and speak to it. But I think, you know, it's something we're talking about a lot, so it's obviously a concern for us and, you know, for future consideration.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Oh,
I just want to quickly provide some context for the planning board standards. 100 trips per day or 50 peak hour trips is a threshold for major site plan review. This project is going to trigger a major site plan review for multiple reasons, but we are kind of just at that cusp of additional traffic information being required for a project of this size.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did you?
Oh, I was gonna, sorry to go back, but I was gonna go back to number 1, and I apologize for doing this, but as I was thinking about it, I think I'd just like to put it on record that it talks about the nature of the proposed application being consistent with the zoning regulations, and so, you know, we're outside of that boundary. I do appreciate that we're, you know, basically across the street from the allowable, and I think it's just important to recognize that there was a lot of hard work that was put into zoning and the way that things were determined going forward to try to create, you know, what's the term I want to use? I don't know if it's harmonious or, what, you know, there's a lot of planning that's been going on and a lot of consideration that was put into that. So while I don't disagree with the application, I think it's important to recognize the efforts and the hard work that's gone into thinking about where those lines are drawn. And so I just want to put that on record.
I agree. I mean, they probably wouldn't draw it like halfway on a street or something. You know, I could see that it was more convenient, made sense to stop it at Davis Street. You know, that's where you end that zone. And, you know, many of our applications seem to be right on edges of zones where it could be this or that, and somebody would like to have something permitted that, the next zone over, it can be, an easier process. So, but I agree that does seem to be what our task often is, and not to belittle all that amount of work that has gone before, because it's pretty huge amount of work. All right, so let's close all of that, and I will accept a motion. And I would assume, unless we didn't talk about it, but I would assume we make the motion identical to what there was before, since we didn't discuss changing any of the wording.
I guess before you do that, I guess I'd like to bring that up. I think Evan recommended that we go ahead and do the motion for the 2-year extension. And I was just interested to hear any questions or comments on that from the board.
Is that a default, essentially? If we don't actually say 2 years, that's like a default?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd have to specifically, as part of the motion, reduce that amount of time.
Okay.
I'll put forth a motion. So I move that we approve ZBA 2025-08 for the extension of a drive-through special exception for property located at 147 Main Street, tax map number 584-060-000-000, as shown in the application and supporting materials received on July 17, 2025, with the following condition: that no exterior order board be present.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, that was Mr. Guyot and made the motion, and Mr. Schrantz seconded it. All right, let us go through the 7 standards. Number 1, the nature of the proposed application is consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning regulations, this LDC, and the city's comprehensive master plan, and complies with all applicable standards in this LDC for this particular use. All those who agree with that, say aye. That was unanimous. Number 2, the proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as not to endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. All those in favor? Again, unanimous. 3, the proposed use will be established, maintained, and operated so as to be harmonious with the surrounding area and will not impede the development, use, and enjoyment of adjacent property. All those in favor? That is again unanimous. 4, the proposed use will be of a character that does not produce noise, odors, glare, and/or vibration that adversely affects the surrounding area. All those in favor? Again unanimous. Number 5, the proposed use will not place an excessive burden on public improvements, facilities, services, or utilities. All those in favor? Unanimous. The proposed use will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of any feature determined to be of significant natural, scenic, or historic importance. All those, again, unanimous. 7, the proposed use will not create a traffic safety hazard or a substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity of the use. All those in favor? And opposed? All right, that was 4 in favor, 1 opposed. That was Mr. Leroy. And on the main motion, going back to approve ZBA 2025-08 for the extension of the drive-through special exception for property located at 147 Main Street, tax map 060-000-000 as shown on the application and supporting materials received on July 17, 2025, with the following conditions. No exterior order board may be present. All those in favor, please signify. That's 4 in favor, and all those opposed, Mr. Leroy. So that passes. Thank you very much, gentlemen. All right, let us move on. We have ZBA 2025-19. ZBA 2025-19, petitioner Scott and Eileen Adams requests a variance for property located at 509 Hurricane Road, tax map number 222-017-000, and is in the rural district. The petitioner is requesting a variance to permit street access up to an approximately 18-degree slope per Article 9.3.4.c of the zoning regulations. We could hear from staff first, please. I'll invite the applicants. You can come up here and take a seat. If you see the light is green, then that means your microphone is on. If it's red, you just press the button and that'll turn it on.
Okay. The subject parcel is an existing 5-acre lot with 781 feet of frontage located on the eastern side of Hurricane Road, approximately 1.5 miles southeast of the Westmoreland municipal boundary. The property contains an existing single-family residence, barn, additional outbuildings, and associated site improvements. The property is characterized by steep slopes along the property frontage and throughout the lot area. There is a contour map that was included with the staff report. The street access that serves the single-family residence is located approximately 430 feet to the south of the proposed agricultural street access. The applicant had previously submitted a street access permit application to seek approval for this second agricultural street access point in their property. The application was originally denied by the city engineer due to deficiencies in the proposal related to sight lines, material for the drive, and slope. Planning staff and the city engineer were able to resolve the issues related to the sight lines and material of the driveway. The applicant was also able to seek a driveway exception from the driveway standards in Article 23 of the Land Development Code to allow for a second street access point on a residential lot. Normally, a residential lot is only allowed one street access permit without the exception. The intent of the application is to seek relief from the 15-foot slope limit for a driveway in order to permit the installation of a permanent limited access agricultural street access point. The access is proposed to be used to navigate a tractor to the northern portion of the property. In regards to application analysis, 9.3.4 of the Land Development Code is grading and drainage. Driveways and associated parking spaces shall be graded to prevent drainage across sidewalks, curb cuts, streets, or onto adjacent property, except that portion of the driveway within the public right-of-way may drain towards the street. Driveways and associated parking spaces shall not block the flow of drainage in gutters or drainage ditches or pipes. And C, which is why we're all here today, is driveways and associated parking spaces shall not have a slope greater than 15%. I have prepared 2 conditions for this application if the board is inclined to approve this request this evening. Both of them are related to a change in use of this agricultural street access. So one is the street access / driveway shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way. And 2, if the property is ever subdivided, this street access / driveway shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way unless it is redesigned and reconstructed to conform to all street access and driveway regulations. Our public street access standards in Article 23, and then to a great extent, the driveway regulations in Article 9, in working with the applicant to bring them before you all this evening and discussing it with the city engineer, the regulations don't really contemplate anything besides what you would imagine is a suburban, urban, single-family, two-family driveway curb cut. There's one reference in the list of street accesses that the city engineer has the purview to approve without going to the planning board, that references agricultural street access. There is no definition in the land development code for agricultural street access. There is no specific different regulations for an agricultural street access. It's just kind of a one-off acknowledgement that it might exist, and it might be a situation that the city engineer is confronted with, but there's no guidance in the land development code to on how to handle something like that differently than a paved connection point to a single family or a two-family residence. I specifically say single family and two family because those are allowed to be approved administratively through the city engineer's office. Any other kind of new curb cut has to go to the planning board, where the planning board has some more flexibility in making that decision. However, the slope requirement is in the zoning ordinance. So the planning board has their own hands tied for that as well. So I really just wanted to give you that extra context related to the code. But that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any?
Yep, question for you. Does this have to go to planning board if we approve the 15% variance?
It does not. So this is the last hurdle. Because it is a single-family residence, they've gotten the exception to have the second curb cut. So granting them the variance for the slope will allow the city engineer to issue the driveway permit for this situation.
Can you speak a little bit more to the, bear with me while I scroll back here. So on the motion, the first qualification is that the street access shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way. So that, I think that's going toward the idea that it shouldn't serve a house or a barn or whatever that might be, right? And so really the goal here is to try to gain access so that you can get to the garden and you can farm up on the land that is less accessible if you use the existing driveway. It doesn't talk about agriculture, and I think you specifically didn't put that in there because that's not part of the description that you're providing. Is that correct, or is there a reason or a way to restrict it to agricultural use only?
We can, so this is suggested language that you are more than, that I encourage you to change and alter as you see fit. I wanted to be really specific by referring to any building or structure, just because if you just say like shall only be used for an agricultural use. In the state of New Hampshire, an agricultural use is extremely broad. And you could very easily attach a barn to this and say, well, the barn's an agricultural use. You said it could only be used for an agricultural use. So I'm putting up this 10,000 square foot pole barn that I'm going to do whatever with. And that's why I chose to recommend any building or structure as opposed to keeping it broad. If the board determines that it's more appropriate to just say limited to agriculture, that's your decision, not mine to make, so.
Yeah, I think because we don't discuss these things except in public, we talk, that's the reason for the question, right? Like, what was the thought process to get us to those words that we're gonna try to approve? And I think, I think this is my last question, but bear with me. In the planning, you mentioned that the city engineers looked at this. When I look at the site plan, it looks like the driveway is really close to the north property line. And so are there any requirements for a distance from property line for a secondary access or whatever we're terming this?
Yeah, it would be 3 feet. So yeah, that's what's required in Article 9. So it's greater than 3 feet away from the property line. So it does not need, it complies with that. That's the only setback requirement.
Yep. Perfect, thank you.
Any other? Okay, so you folks can introduce yourselves and whatever background story you want to put with this, and then you can go through the criteria. You can even just read us what you wrote, and that would probably do it, and then we might have some questions for you.
Okay, great. Go easy on us. We don't have our lawyer with us. Yes. So I'm Eileen Casey. This is Scott Adams. We live at 509 Hurricane Road. And I'll just read the application for you. So the written narrative, 509 Hurricane Road, owned by us, is located in the rural district. We're seeking an approval for a second street access up an approximately 18-degree slope to allow safer direct access to our full 5-acre property. It's a variance requested from Article 9.3.4C, so street access up an approximately 18-degree slope. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest because the property is located in a low-density rural district where an access on an 18-degree slope into the lot would have minimal to no impact to the general public or the greater Keene area. The access way is designed to minimize any issues with runoff or erosion into the roadway. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed because the accessway follows the natural slope of the land and will minimize cutting into the natural vegetation and ledge that occurs on the slope. The accessway will also be as short as possible to minimize disturbance to the natural vegetation. The access would be minimally or seasonably used for agricultural or gardening purposes, allowing delivery and movement of compost, dirt, mulch into the field. The accessway will occasionally be driven on by heavy vehicles such as the tractor or delivery trucks that would help maintain and compact the surface to prevent erosion. The accessway will be designed to allow proper drainage and prevent erosion running into the road while aesthetically remaining in keeping with the rural area. Granting the variance would do substantial justice because the accessway to the lot would allow safer access into the portion of the lot that is furthest from the current access or driveway, and this access will allow the property owners to fully utilize the property safely as we age in place. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished because, given the rural low-density district and that other properties along Hurricane Road also have accessways that traverse slopes, we do not believe that granting this variance would diminish surrounding property values in any way. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because parcel 222-017-000000000 is located on a sloping hill. The current street access is located at the southern portion of the lot. Deliveries of bulk gardening products such as mulch, dirt, and compost currently must be dropped on the driveway. To get these products to the northern portion of the lot requires a tractor to make a hazardous traverse across the front slope of the property to avoid plumbing and septic around the residence. Access to the northern portion is further impeded by an old stone wall that runs down the middle of the property. And you can see the plot diagram. The most direct access into the northern portion of the lot is up a slope that is greater than 15 degrees. Placing the accessway where proposed creates minimal disturbance to the hillside and maintains as much natural vegetation as possible, helping maintain the natural aesthetic of the area. The accessway design is gravel and includes a berm at the top to minimize runoff down the slope. In addition, there is a drainage way alongside the slope to direct any runoff down into the culvert at street level. If desired, further crowning or berms can be added along the approximate 100-foot length to further mitigate runoff or erosion into the road, should the city deem appropriate. The proposed uses are reasonable, one, because the second access is a small path that allows access into the field over a drainage ditch on the Hurricane Road and would allow the property owners a safe, direct way to fully access their property with minimal impact to the abutting properties or the city of Keene. Explain how, if the criteria in subparagraph A are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of it. Creating an accessway that complies with the 15-degree ordinance would require significantly more cutting into the slope and disturbance of the natural vegetation, which would likely cause more erosion issues. In addition, there is significant ledge along the slope that impedes creating a slope that complies with the ordinance without significant excavation that would cause disturbance to the abutters and potentially impact the aesthetic of the area. And Evan, I think you have one picture, but I have two additional ones that maybe give you a little bit more idea of what that slope really looks like and what the difference between the 15 and 18 degree is, if that's helpful. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of little. And this would just really make it much easier for us. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not a trick question.
No.
So that's the picture of the existing drive?
Yeah, of the second access that we've put in. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So the access is already in.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Yep, thank you. So the picture is of the access that has been put in, and the access that you're showing us in the picture is what you're coming to get approval for? So it's already been put in place, but now you're trying to get, you're just looking for approval
Correct.
for that?
Yeah, we weren't aware it was too
Just-
sloped.
Just for history, last year, we put in a barn at the top of the hill. And when we put the barn in, the construction people needed a way to get up to the barn to deliver the products and stuff. So that was the start of the access way.
Do we have other questions?
Is the picture in our packet of the road that has been put in place also? It is,
Yeah,
okay.
just a different angle.
Yeah, I think that was probably my biggest question is drainage, right? And so who's gonna oversee the drainage to make sure that we don't create some dam or some erosion that potentially can happen in the future?
Yeah, so the contractor who sort of took a rough sort of temporary access and sort of turned it into more of a permanent thing, did make some improvements related to drainage to ensure that it wasn't going to erode into the street. There's a berm at the top before it actually, the slope starts to help keep flow from the property itself running down the driveway. And then ultimately, the applicant is responsible for maintaining the appropriate functionality. And if it is washing out into Hurricane Road, if it is causing erosion concerns, that will have to be addressed one way or the other. But as it is currently installed, seems to be adequate from, based on the city engineer's comments.
Other questions? Well, I'll just put a quick statement that my wife needed to get out of the house on Saturday or Sunday. And so we actually drove by while you were on your tractor up in the field there. And also, as part of my job, I also do stream assessments, stream crossings for the Planning Commission. We just did Antrim for anyone who wants to know. And the culvert you put in and all of the variety of stone and everything is very good. It's going to carry the water correctly along the road. What I did notice is there was some erosion in the driveway, so that might need to be crested a little bit more.
crowned, yeah.
And maybe ditched slightly. I saw the berm, and I could definitely tell that there's a lot of things in place that mitigate a lot of the potential for water to come down. But you could do a little more to help direct it to where you've got that great culvert.
Yep.
So that was the only thing I noticed on that. So, anyway, I thought that the culvert, that was a very nice, that was, someone had put some work on that,
Yeah.
so that was good, yeah.
Yep.
All right, if there are no more questions, I'll close that part of it, and we'll quickly go through whether there's anyone here to speak in one way or the other. So I see nobody here to speak in opposition. I see nobody here to speak on your behalf for any further comments. So we'll close the public hearing and let's discuss the application. I suspect this will be fairly quick, but I don't want to jinx anything. So our first item is granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Everyone pretty much agree with that? Okay. This isn't a vote yet, but this is just if we have conversation or discussion. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. Any discussion on that? I see nodding of heads in assent, so we'll continue. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Any comments on that? I think everyone agrees it would. If the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. I believe that's an accurate statement also. Any disagreement? No? Everyone agrees with that. Unnecessary hardship. Owing to the special conditions of the property, distinguish it from other properties in the area. Denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of the provision to this property. Again, what we would be asking them to do to try and cut 3 more degrees off of that is an awful lot of work for an access road. And again, if there is ledge there, if any of you guys have ever dealt with ledge, it's it's not a fun thing. So I think that's definitely good. Any other comments on it?
I think the only other thought I would add there, Mr. Chairman, is that, the lot is unique in relative to its slope. It's not totally unusual along Hurricane Road, but, I've been by the property, and it is a very nice culvert, by the way. I've ridden by on my bicycle. It's one of my hill climb routes. And, you have what you have. It's a natural environment. You've got the slope. It does make that lot unique. And number 5, we always struggle with for the hardship conditions, and I think, it does qualify here.
And the proposed use is a reasonable one. All right, and we don't have to go through B because A is. All right, so I will entertain a motion for ZBA 2025-16. 19, excuse me.
Motion to approve ZBA twenty twenty-five nineteen for variance to allow a street access driveway with a slope of 19% for property located at
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Make a motion to approve ZBA 2025 for the variance to allow a street access slash driveway with a slope of 19% for property located at 509 Hurricane Road, tax map number 222-017-000-000, as shown in the application for and supporting materials received on October 17th, 2025, with the following conditions. 1, the street access slash driveway should not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way. And 2, if the property is ever subdivided, this street access slash driveway shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way unless it is redesigned and reconstructed to conform to all street access slash driveway regulations.
That was, the motion was made by Mr. Burke. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Leroy. All right, let us go throughout the criteria and vote on them. Number 1, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. All those who approve, that is unanimous. If the variance were granted, the spirit of the ordinance would be observed. All those in favor? That's unanimous. 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice. All those in favor? Unanimous. 4, if the variance were granted, the values of the surrounding properties would not be diminished. All those in favor? Unanimous. 5, unnecessary hardship. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because no fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. All those in favor? That again is unanimous. And our last one is the proposed use is a reasonable one. All those in favor? And on the main item of approved ZBA 2025-19 for the variance to allow a street access slash driveway with a slope of 19 degrees for the property located at 509 Hurricane Road, tax map 222-017-0000000, as shown in this application and supporting materials received on October 17, 2025. With the following conditions of the street access driveway shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way, and if the property is ever subdivided, the street access driveway shall not be used to connect any building or structure to the public right-of-way unless it is redesigned and reconstructed to conform to all street access driveway regulations. All those in favor of the main motion? And again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Yes, I do want to say thank you to staff to make this process hopefully as painless as possible for all involved.
And if you're up in our way, stop by. Thank you very much.
All right. So, do we have any new business from staff?
So we do have those changes to the rules of procedure that I threatened you all about last month. So we are officially introducing them at this meeting, and then we'll vote to adopt in December. They are included in the packet. One or two minor grammatical changes that aren't really worth discussing have taken place. Applicable changes have been highlighted. One thing, and this came up more at the planning board than at the zoning board, but just clarifying under the quorum section that if an alternate member has been seated in the place of a regular member, that alternate will stay a voting member for the duration of the application. So if for whatever reason a regular member is not present, we seat an alternate, an application gets continued to another meeting. at that meeting, the regular member who was absent is present, they will not be voting. They can still deliberate and participate, but the alternate that was seated in their stead will remain the voting member for the duration of that application, and that's what that change is. Also, just kind of a minor clerical under order of business. It says roll call by the chair. We're striking by the chair to just do roll call. That doesn't mean the chair can't do it if they don't want to, but it just makes it simpler. Under applications, we've since added a floodplain variance process as required by FEMA. So we've added a new variance application specific to relief from the floodplain regulations. So that got added into there. And then just clarifying that a motion to rehear is also relevant in that sentence. So we've added motion to rehear in there. Further clarifying the term abutter. All I think we did was add the quotation marks around the word abutter. It was already in there. And then on page 82 of the PDF, which is page 7 of the regulations, deadline for filing, we've changed that from 17 days to 24 days, which just puts it 1 week earlier, which will mean that the deadline to file an application will be the Friday of the week where we hold meetings. So we'll hold our meeting on Monday, and then the deadline for new applications will be that Friday. That will go into effect next year. So one of the things we'll do in December is adopt the schedule, the calendar schedule for the year. So those changes will take effect then. And that'll just give staff a little bit more time to work with an applicant to prepare an application. Because right now, the deadline is that Friday, and then the packet has to go out that next Friday. So that barely gives any time for tweaks and adjustments. Never you mind staff review. And then fees, this is citywide for all land use boards where we notice abutters. We are no longer doing certified mail. We're using a different product called certificate of mail. The statute requires that abutters be noticed by verified mail. In very specific circumstances, statute does also require certified mailings for things, in which case we will do certified mailings when absolutely we have to. But certificate of mailing is about $2.40 a letter, as opposed to almost $6 a letter for certified mail. We've also received a complaint from residents who miss the postman when they've got the certified letter in hand. So they get the green slip saying, hey, you've got something at the post office. And then life happens. It takes this person over a week to get to the post office to pick up their mail, to find out that the zoning board meeting that they were noticed about happened 2 days before they picked up their letter. So certificate of mailing will go right in somebody's mailbox. There's no need to chase the postman. So that's what that change is about. And then supplemental information, which is basically if an applicant or an applicant's representative submits substantive additional information within 10 days before the public hearing. It used to be that the board was required to, by their own regulations, stop everything, look at the new submittal, decide by a vote whether to accept it or to continue the application if the board felt like it needed more time to digest that new information. All we're proposing to do is change the shall to a may. So it still gives you a process if you're in this situation and a board member feels like it's pertinent to do that, but you are not shackled and required to do it. So if some new information has been provided, either the night of the meeting, one could argue, based on those pictures that were given to you, you would have had to stop your proceedings and vote to accept that as, or deciding to continue the application, so you'd have another month to look at those pictures.
I think it's a great idea, because I prefer not to be shackled, so, you know.
So yeah, so it gives you the flexibility if you think it's pertinent, but I hate shalls and stuff. Like, we're all adults here, we can make a decision for ourselves. Oh yeah, and then this document is something that's been changed and modified and written 1,000 years ago and things like that. So something that you've been neglecting in your responsibilities, Rich,
I see that now.
is reporting on how the public notice and the personal notice was given. So we've deleted that because that's kind of ridiculous. And then, yeah, another, the board may accept evidence that pertains to the facts of the case or how the zoning ordinance, and that just goes back to the supplemental information clause. So that's, again, going from a will to a may. Oh, yeah, and then the very last thing is for joint board meeting stuff, just shall concur with these conditions and not in these conditions. That's it. So,
All right. We will vote on those in the December meeting. All right. Any other business?
that is all I have.
All right. Then let us adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much for your work tonight.